All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Long Coffee Break. My name is Devin Gash, sales engineer for the Fort Collins Group. Um, Today we are presenting the Ruskin Snow Stop Louvers with Ghassan. Ghassan's our regional sales manager with Ruskin. He's been in the industry for 30 years, was a consultant for 11, has been in sales for 19, with uh, with some um, long interaction for most of those years. Ghassan, go ahead and take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Devin. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present this morning. The topic is going to be the snow louvers. You know, years ago, there was we started getting a lot of activities asking for um, basically an application to handle snow buildup on louvers, and also like how do you handle those louvers when or intake uh, in a climate where you've got the snow. So, there isn't really an AMCA standard out there to do testing for snow louvers, similar to what you see for air performance or water penetration. But the same really standards apply to this application here. So really, the best way to keep the snow away from intake on building is to put a weather hood on it. That will give you basically 100% proof. But architects don't like that look, facility owners don't like it. And then for the life of that building, whether it's summer, it's winter, you basically got higher static of intake on that. So Ruskin developed this new product for the snow louver. It's actually been out there in the market for a while. We tested it in a 4 inch per hour snowfall, and it performed very well. So it's very similar that this basically the controls is very similar. The method of treating the snow is very similar to what you do for snow melt on sidewalks, on driveways. Um, we basically heat up the louver instead of heating the slab. We basically got an electric mesh that heats that louver and radiate the heat. So when the snow contacted, it would basically melt that snow, and then we'll drain it out of that louver. Now, for this to work very well, is really you got to prevent the snow from buildup on there. So um, So basically, this is the product. It's the ELF 375. If you're familiar with the Ruskin nomenclature or models, it's the ELF 375DX. That's the louver that we use. It's a stationary louver, horizontal blades, 4 inch deep, aluminum louver. But we integrated with this heat stop system, mist stop or snow stopper, snow mesh electric panel, and it comes in basically factory installed. So just like the ELF 375 DX with all the performances, it just basically called the DSS for the snow stopper. It comes in from the factory in a sleeve. It has aluminum strainer on it, and then it has a sleeve, and then it got the electrical panels already factory installed, and then it'll have the drains at the bottom of that sleeve. One thing to note is the sleeve is not traditional that you put a sleeve on a louver and it goes full height of the louver, full width of the louver. This sleeve would go the full height, it'll go the full width, but then on the height, it terminates about 5 inches above the louver, and that allow a mechanism and a space to do the draining on the louver itself. Uh, Directly behind the louver, we'll have a strainer. It's an aluminum, and really the purpose of that is to create more of a laminar airflow. And then you've got the sleeve itself, and then you've got the drain ports at the bottom of the sleeve, and with the electrical panel. One thing to note is that the electrical panel only requires 1 inch of clearance behind it, but really this is not a ducted application. It really meant to be like in a plenum where you have an access to that electric heater mesh for maintenance, for controls. You could opt, as a facility, could opt to remove that heating mesh in the summer season to basically improve on the pressure drop through that louver assembly. Again, the whole thing ships as a factory assembly with the sleeve, the strainer, the electrical panel, but there's basically all the associated controls or the associated power that needs to be coordinated. And so, as an engineer, as a design engineer, you need to specify a sensor for an outside temperature and a participation and basically ambient condition that you know if there's going to be a snow buildup to energize that heater. And then obviously you need the electrical setup for it, whether it's 208, 277, or 240. So you need to coordinate with Long to make sure you've got all those other accessories. Ruskin doesn't supply the snow stop disconnect or the snow stop controller, but that's something you can work with Long Building Technology to provide. But you need to capture that on the control documents and the contract documents. The maximum shift section is 48 by 90. And the reason I mentioned that, it's very clear, it's very important to understand the constraints that you've got with the electrical heater mesh. We standardized on 48 by 42 panels and a minimum of 14 by 20. So as a design engineer, when laying this out, you got to make sure you understand, or we do the layout to make sure you're maintaining the maximum section, ship section, the minimum ship section of the louver, but also coordinate the size of the electrical panel. So you might opt to, instead of having a 48 by 90, you might want to have a 48, say by 88 or something like that. So you have basically a full coverage of that electric panel. Again, 19-inch deep sleeve, so you want to account for that in your design, whether you've got cross bracing of structure or whether you've got a tight mechanical room, and how are you going to be able to provide that air intake into the basically the louver itself. We have an excellent program if you're not familiar with it. So if you go to Ruskin website, you can go to the LEAD software program, and you can do a selection for the ELF 375DX. You won't have the ELF 375DSS, but you can have the selection for the ELF 37DX, knowing your minimum and maximum sections. And one thing to note about the maximum section, you can have unlimited size of those. It's just basically the ship section itself, but you can have a higher assembly. I wanted to outline here a selection. So I did one for 48 by 90, and I did a selections for, say, 0.1 pressure drop. And then for that same airflow or that same airflow condition, I used it for the snow louver. And because of the strainer, because of the electric mesh, you're basically, your pressure drop more than doubled. So you make sure you want to do that when you're doing the layout. And then one thing to note is, the louver can handle a lot higher velocity before you start getting water penetration into the louver assembly. But with the snow louver, we want to maintain a good conditions. You want to maintain that velocity at 500 feet per minute to allow proper heat, melting of that snow buildup. So basically, just the takeaways, you're going to make sure you're designed for maintaining the airflow. It's gonna prevent blocking of the airflow during this, snow conditions, maximum like 4 inch per hour. You might have fine snow particles that's going to make it through the louver assembly, so you want to make sure you have the provisions for that. You want to make sure you've got the right design as far as the electrical. And then one thing I didn't mention is make sure you got the 500 feet per minute. You're going to make sure you have the proper drainage. So Russ can provide the assembly with the drainage, but then you got to make sure that this is all captured in the contract documents, and you drain it per the building code by the jurisdiction having authority, and make sure you spill out the electrical and the controls on that. And with that, I'll turn it back to Devin. Thank you.
Hassan, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today. Yeah, it was short and sweet. If anyone has any questions regarding our snow stop louvers or any Ruskin product, please reach out to your Long sales engineer. We'd be happy to help you guys get something designed for snow stop. Moving to our winner for this week's prizes. Just realized that these prizes are not updated. And then please don't forget to join us next week. Mike Jacobs and Mike Woolsey will be talking about demand control ventilation with Swigon, and it's a Swigon solution for energy savings. Yeah, thanks again for joining. Everyone have a wonderful week, and yeah, thanks for working with Long. Have a great day.